Hello, listeners. We are your co-hosts, Janine Bailey and Marie Quigley, for the Empower World Coaching and Leadership Podcast. Empower World brings guests who are making a difference to the world to inspire coaches and leaders who lead with mind, heart, and soul. Hello and welcome to Empower World, the Coaching and Leadership Podcast. My name is Marie Quigley, and this morning I'm with the wonderful Pia Ault. So Pia is, she's got decades of coaching leaders. Her mission is to integrate empathy and emotional intelligence into the professional growth space. She leverages horse wisdom, which is fascinating, to enhance leadership skills and support individuals and teams in their transformation. Pia's approach, refined through her facilitating experiential workshops and executive coaching, is rooted in conversational intelligence and situational leadership. The transformative experiences she creates are grounded in cultural sensitivity. I know she's lived in many countries around the world, and also a commitment to women's empowerment, aligning with her role as a professional coach and facilitator. And apart from all of that, I'm honored to call Pia my friend and have her back again on our podcast, because it's a few years ago, Pia, since we last had a conversation.
Yeah, it's been a few years, and I listened to it the other day, and I thought, oh my God, we've both come such a long way since that episode.
We have, yeah. You were one of the early guests on our show, Pia.
I remember.
Yeah. And recently you've come back into my awareness. It's funny how sometimes we lose track of what people are doing. And then suddenly I'm seeing a lot of your work, particularly with horses, that just fascinated me. And I thought, we've got to get you back on and talk about this. Because sometimes coaches or leaders who coach think there's only one approach to coaching. And what you bring is something different. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Talk to us about what you do, Pia.
Oh, well, I think I might have come on your radar because I am myself becoming much more visible. This was an intent I set early this year, that I wanted to be more, I wanted to certainly be more visible, but more importantly, I wanted to write more, and I wanted to get my thoughts and my opinions and my voice out there. So this has been a hectic year already, but it's going to culminate into a couple of speaking events, big speaking events next year, which we'll probably get into in a little bit. But yeah, I've become more visual, so therefore I'm showing up more. And this is also what I want to project to other women, for them to show up and not be timid or think that they don't have anything to share. I have so much to share. I can't wait, for the world to see it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the older we get, the more we recognize how much we do have to share.
Yeah, and we become less afraid of stepping out there and showing it. We're older, we're wiser. And if we had that wisdom when we were 20 or 30, but, now it's the time. It's never too late.
Yeah, now is the time. Absolutely. And if you think about now is the time, Pia, and think about all the transformation and learning you've done over the years, what is happening in your practice now?
So there's a couple of shifts I'm seeing. I've, as you know, as a coach, well, just as a human being, at least this is my philosophy. You always evolve. You always educate yourself. You continue to learn, and I have certainly done that over the years. I might have even become slightly addicted to certifications and more training and more degrees, but there's been a shift for me and my practice in the last few years. One big one was that I moved from Dubai after 12 years and having to relocate myself, my family, all of my, umpteen animals, including my horse, to southern Spain, which was a big transformation for us. And also it caused me to take a pause because I couldn't just pick up from all of the success I'd had in Dubai. And I think that's important to kind of realize that, yes, you can coach all over the world. Yes, you can coach in any culture and any person, any nationality, or, wherever you're sort of in. But when you then move that business and you're doing something that involves animals, it all takes a shift. And I had to sort of sit back and go, okay, I'm not going to be able to pick up where I left. I had a very successful business. I was well known in Dubai, for these leadership development workshop with horses, and also workshops with women who wanted to come and be with the horses. And then all of a sudden I'm in a country where I don't fully speak the language. So I can't yet hold a fluent workshop in Spanish. And then I'm in an area where there's a lot of expats. So that's a lot of retired people. That's again a shift in the audience and in the clientele. So yeah, I've had to kind of sit back, and I guess I've had to put myself through a renewal or a reinvention.
Yeah.
In a way.
I hear that. I mean, having reinvented my life so many times over the past 35 years, I resonate so much with what you're saying. I remember a friend a few years ago, a German girlfriend of mine, she said, "You're a master at reinvention." And I thought, really? I feel like I just adapt. But actually, her words were really interesting, because I think the more flexible we are, and you're proof of this, the more flexible we are to open our minds to possibilities, instead of seeing it as something as the go wrong, oh gosh, I can't speak Spanish, or I can't do this. You're looking at a way that is opening up possibilities. And yes, it takes hard work and it takes grafting again, but you're not afraid of that. I know you.
No.
So you get on and do it. And
Yes.
I think it's more than resilience. It's more than being able to bounce back. It's using all of your learning that you've had throughout the years to put into practice. So you're walking your talk, so to speak, just like your clients.
Yeah, and I think, well, what you said about the skills and the knowledge, that doesn't go away, and a lot of that, if not all of it, is transferable to anything new that you do. So yeah, my clientele might have shifted a little bit, but the tools, the resources, the knowledge, the creativity, all of that is still there, even though the actual profile of my client or my niche might have changed a little bit. I've had to give up a wonderful partner in Dubai, my previous partner, Nicola. I think you met her in one of the workshops.
Yes.
We've had to sort of say, because her life took her in a different direction, having to go back to Germany to care for her parents. My life took me in a different direction. But here in Spain, I've picked up a new partner. So I'm working with a wonderful woman named Sarah, and we just happen to have our horse. Our horses are in the same stable, but she's also a practitioner of horse-assisted learning, and she's an NLP practitioner. So we're now putting that together, and bringing our individual skills and knowledge and experience into a new business. So yeah, I mean, the opportunities are endless, and I'm so excited about what's going to happen. Really excited.
Congratulations. It sounds like
Thank you.
a wonderful time in your life for creating maybe something new, but bringing the old with it.
Yeah.
But I can hear the excitement and joy as you're thinking, and I can certainly see from your post the joy that's coming out of the work you do.
Yeah.
So you described it as horse-assisted learning and coaching, I think. Pia, what does that mean?
There are many terms, because you have typically you'll see equine assisted therapy or equine assisted learning or equine assisted whatever. And I just boil it down, because the word equine, as fancy and the Latin word, it still kind of throws people off. So I've just gone back to complete basics. It's horse assisted learning or horse assisted coaching, which means that the horse is a partner and a teacher in the work. So they, as sentient beings, show up with the facilitator or the coach, in this case me, and we work in a partnership to facilitate that learning and insight to the client who is in the pen or the arena, together. And that can be an individual, or it can be a group of people, or a team, or a group of individuals who are coming together for a workshop. So it can be anywhere from 1 to typically, 6 to 8 people. And if it's more than that, we'll use additional facilitators, of course, as the numbers grow. And we'll use additional horses when it's called for, because we have to break out in smaller groups. But that's the essence of it.
It sounds so fascinating. And if I were a client that came to you, but I didn't know about horse facilitated learning, and we were having a conversation, Pia, what would make me want to look at this as a way of coaching in a new way? Because we've got the traditional way, a bit like we're doing here, sitting in front of a screen and having a partnership. What would entice me to work with the animals?
I would always invite you, if I hear something that could call for additional insight. I mean, if I can't bring the horse into the coaching session because it's a virtual session and you're sitting in a different country, I will always strive to bring some kind of horse wisdom or learning into the conversation and say, oh, horses react to boundaries, or horses are sensitive to emotions, or whatever it is that we're having a talk about in the moment. But if I'm able to bring you and the horse and myself together, if we're in the same country, I will always make the invitation and share with you that there might be additional insight to gain. Whatever it is that your issue that you're bringing to the table. And it could be relationship issues. It could be communication. Maybe you want to be a better leader. Maybe you want to be a better mother. Whatever it is that's going on in your life at this moment, if there's something that I can add or bring you additional insight through the horse, that will be my suggestion and invitation. Yeah. I don't force it upon anybody, but I know how powerful and magical it can be. But it's anecdotal, right? You have to be in the moment and experience that for you to go, oh, wow, yeah, that horse really changed my life. It's easy to say,
yeah,
but, experiencing it is 100 times better.
And I haven't experienced it, so I'm a real novice at this. So I'm making up. So, we were lucky enough in Dubai I was right next to the polo club. So I would take my little girl every morning before nursery to see the horses, stroke the horses. She adored them. I, on the other hand, am a little bit afraid of them. So let's say I'm a client who's got this little bit of fear around this magnificent sentient being, because I didn't grow up around them. It's not a natural environment for me, but I'd like to try it. What would the horse be picking up on my fear and, and the questions I have? What would that be like?
So first of all, I wouldn't throw you into the arena with the horse knowing that you had an anxiety. We would obviously be talking about that before we proceed with the session. And I would take you through a safety briefing, and we would talk about where that fear comes from. Where does it reside in your body? What is it that's going on in your body and mind? And you might have had a history of, maybe you were kicked or stepped on by a horse when you were 3 years old, or you had a ride and you were thrown off. I mean, it could be anything that could be sitting in that old trauma. So of course I don't just throw people in. We talk about what it is that's coming up for the client, and I would ask you to just kind of scan your body, go through, let me know where you feel something, whether it's a sensation or a body ache or anything that's shifting, with you. And then we would talk through that. And then I would also ask you, on a level from 1 to 10, how intense is the fear? And so, yeah, you might not go in with the horse in the first instance, or the horse could be in the round pen or the arena, and you could be on the other side of the fence, because that also gives you something, just that interaction of being close. And I think if you say, well, what would you feel? What would the horse sense? The horse senses body language and expression and the way you show up in terms of behavior. So it's not looking at you going, oh my God, she looks really afraid. He or she, of course, senses that there's something that's not right. You might you might look like you're not afraid, but inside you're afraid. And so it's that incongruence that the horses don't sit well with. They want certainty. They want comfort, safety based on their evolution. They're prey animals, so they seek safety. And they won't come to you or follow you or be with you if there's that imbalance or incongruence that's not in alignment with what you're thinking and doing to how you're showing up with your body. That's a big telltale.
Yeah. So we're talking about authenticity kind of from head to toe.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
And as you're doing your work with your client and looking at the emotional work, the presence of whatever's here for the client, looking at their perhaps limiting beliefs or past defining moments that have caused this anxiety to arise. As you're working through that and the client has a desire to work with a horse, then you're introducing how would it work after that if the client's moving through their own stuff and moving into the arena with the horse. What does it look like? Is it riding? Is it being with them?
It can be it's a little bit different from person to person, obviously, with what issues they come with. But so there's never any riding involved. It's all exercises and activities or practices on the ground. The horse can either be free and running around, or it can be on a lead, with a halter on it with a lead. Again, depending on the comfort level of the individual. It's probably easier if I illustrate with an example. So I had one client that came in and it's always, if we're working in a big round pen, it's always safer for the client. And if I'm there with them, I'll be in the middle with them as well, but to be in the center of the arena so that the horse can run around, without, plowing you down or whatever. If you're up against the fence, it can be a little bit more dangerous. But I had one client who he had issues with his team and he had issues with him being calm. Like he was saying, oh, well, I've got a little bit of ADD. I'm always having trouble focusing, which means my team isn't focusing. And it feels like we're running around with our heads cut off, like chickens. And what he wasn't seeing was that the horse was just trotting and running around, not panicky, but just moving its legs and moving and moving and moving around. And so I'm observing the horse. I'm observing what he's doing when he's telling me this. And I said, so it's a little bit like what's happening here. He goes, why isn't the horse standing still? Why isn't your team standing still? What's going on at work right now that's causing you all to run around? And he said, oh, project after project, deadline after deadline, and we just can't seem to catch up. And as he was saying that, I felt myself becoming sort of, like short of breath, like, I'm like, wow, yeah, I can sense it. So I fed that back to him and said, yeah, you're also leaving me a bit sort of breathless. So let's take a deep breath and just kind of stand here for a moment and be calm and quiet. And eventually the horse slowed down to a walk and it just turned around and stood there and looked at us. Yeah.
I mean, that's a beautiful example. I feel like smiling when I talk about when you're talking about that, Pia, because there's so many systems involved that the client's system, he's talking about his team, which the horse is picking up on. You're looking at the here and now and perhaps responding like the team are breathless. And through all of the wisdom in that kind of constellation comes together to create such a massive awareness for the client that, of course, they can do something about then, because it's 95% of the journey of change is awareness, right? So that so much awareness from the different systems that are present. I can imagine how powerful that is.
Yeah. And, if we had sat in an office and I was coaching him face to face on a couch, it doesn't really have the same impact. I could have said, well, what's going on with your team? And he would have told me, and I would have said, well, what about this? What's a possibility if we do that? Or if you were to look at this, what then would happen? And it doesn't really illustrate in pictures or action. Whereas when that horse was running around, there was no doubt that it was making him go, whew, I'm like right back in the office. So he could sense it, he could feel it, he could taste it, he could, do you know what I mean? Like all of the whole body is engaged in that learning. And then whoop, comes the light bulb. He goes, yeah, I know exactly what I need to do.
Wow. And as you describe the whole body being engaged, to me, you're bringing in your other learnings and growth of emotional intelligence, as well as conversational intelligence and somatic experience as well in that work.
Yeah. One of the things that we do when I do a workshop where several people are involved, we can do group exercises like standing in front of each other, 2 and 2, walking towards each other, and keep walking until the one person feels that you're in their personal space, and then they put the hand up. So that's a really good way of illustrating where is your boundary, where's your personal boundary. So we involve the body, we involve the boundary setting, the personal space. I make them, and I know this sounds silly, but when we're at the barn or in nature in general, at a farm or a stable, I make them, of course, sense the wind or the sun or anything physical. I make them smell what's going on, aroma wise. A lot of times they smell the grass. They obviously can smell the horse poo and all of that. But it's much, much deeper than that, because I want them to touch the fence. I want them to touch the horse. I want them to immerse their whole body into the environment, because that's what a horse does. It feels and senses the entire environment around it through its hooves, through the hair on its body, the eyes, the ears, everything. It can feel a fly land on it. And we turn off some of those senses when we're in an office all day or in problem solving mode,
Yeah, I heard a researcher talking about the fact that when we're in problem-solving mode, we're using the left part of our brain, which just helps us focus on this one thing. But actually, there's a whole other part of our brain that we're leaving out, all that emotional intelligence and connection that builds trust and rapport and empathy, not just with others, but with ourselves, so that we can regulate our emotions.
Yeah.
If we're not aware of that, how limited our problem-solving abilities are, even though we're using our logic, there's so much more wisdom in using all of our senses. That sounds like very much like what you're describing here.
Well, if you think about it, we're not using all of that because we've been taught not to use it. We've been taught to avoid emotions. And our generation, from when we were young, from our parents and their parents, very much like, oh, let's not get emotional. Let's just kind of sweep that under a rug. So through generations of avoiding emotions or categorizing emotions that are perceived negative. So let's not go into anger. Let's not talk about grief or sadness or hatred or jealousy. No, we can talk about happiness because that's okay. That's positive, right? So that whole conditioning has been with us since we were little children, just, learning to talk and walk. So is it any wonder that when we get into the workplace or we get into a marriage, a relationship, and we have that grained into us that we aren't able to talk about it. We aren't able to name emotions. We don't even know how to feel the emotions. So yeah, this is a big thing with me that I've also, I think, I've studied this for years with Carla McLaren and the language of emotions and the art of empathy. And yes, I can't get enough emotions and empathy into the toxic workplace. Please put more in.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you talking about the so-called negative emotions, because there is toxic positivity, right? We don't want to just be positive about everything. It's the ability to regulate the challenging emotions that we feel, as well as the joyful emotions. And I remember Brené Brown talking about, if we numb the things that we don't like, we're also going to numb the joy and the connection. We can't numb one set of emotions. So the more our emotional intelligence grows, the better we become at living life in the present and creating fulfillment for ourselves.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And I think so when I work with individuals or teams, you almost cannot have a session without emotions coming up. And it may be that the client don't really recognize what's going on for them emotionally. So I always love to ask, real deep questions. And I'm always very curious about how they might have grown up, how they might have been conditioned. Were they were they rewarded or not for how they, the prestige that they were doing in terms of winning awards, swimming medals, being number one in whatever it was that they were doing, getting straight A's, all of those things that sort of lead us to doing, and chasing that. If I just do more of this, if I sell more, I'll be better. If I become number one more, I'll be better. Because again, that's a condition that we've, sort of, that's been pushed on us, but we're not very often rewarded for being a funny person, being a kind person, being a helpful person. So the doing takes over, and you can't do more to be more. You have to be more, to be more or to do more. Yeah.
So for somebody who might be listening in and think, Pia, what do you mean by be more? How do I tap into that wisdom? I'm a doer. I'm an action taker. I get things done. Tell me more about this being part. Yeah.
Well, that all starts in the self-awareness. Right. So if you look at a surface and you look at an iceberg, what we see above the surface and what other people see about us is just a small part. There's so much more that's below the surface. There is our beliefs, our core principles, our values, our self-limiting beliefs, how we grew up, our traumas, all of the things that we really don't want people to see, or we're not aware of them ourselves, right? So I walk into an office and I don't say good morning one time, and people look at me and they go, oh, I wonder what's up with her, right? But they have no idea what's going on below. Like maybe I had a death in the family, or I just gotten in an accident on the way to work and I'm shooken up. I don't know if shooken up is a word, but anyway, it could be so much more that's going on with a person. And if you don't have that self-awareness, how are you going to have other people be aware of what's going on with you? So the being starts with you, inside yourself, how you regard yourself, how confident you are in yourself, and just maybe being more validated by what you can do than other people validating you for being who you like. I know so many people who are, just take social media, how many likes we want, how many shares, right? Because that gives us some worth. And it's that validation that we seek from others because we may not know how to give it to ourselves.
And I'm guessing if we come back to the horses, they are only being themselves because they don't need to be anything else.
No.
And as they're being the horse in the present moment, they're paying attention to what's in the present moment with the human being, even though they may be looking to the future or the past. They're still looking at what's happening right now and how am I responding to this human being. So there's a lot of information, I'm guessing, horse provides.
Yeah. And they don't hang on to things like we do, right? I mean, we self-analyze all the time. We take a decision, then we go, wow, was that the right decision? Should I have done that? They just go, okay, is there a danger here? And if there's a danger, do I need to run? Do I need to spend my energy running? Because if I don't want to have to spend my energy running for something that's not dangerous, then I'd rather save that energy because I might need it later. I mean, they really are truly about survival. We don't have to survive that way anymore. We just have to get over the crisis and then be able to get to the next one and the next one and the next one. But eventually, this is why you get burnout, because we don't conserve that energy wisely, whereas the horses do. And they're not concerned about what's going to happen 2 weeks from now. They're concerned about, is there danger right now? Do I need to run? If not, I'm going to conserve my energy and go back to grazing. And we just don't go back to grazing. We just anticipate there's going to be something else coming.
Right. Yes. And so with that if we make a decision, with the anticipating, did I do it right? What could have done that decision? If you make a decision, you've made the decision. Now it's about being with that decision and make whatever decision you made work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, how many times I still do it, even as, as much of self-development and self-awareness I've gone through, I second guess myself a lot and go, oh, I should have done that. The should have, could have, would have, which is so unhelpful. But, yes, because we still are human and we still have that ability to think much more than animals do. So.
And if now I'm going on to practicalities, Pia, of if somebody wanted to work with you and work with the horses and use all of that wisdom that comes from the three-way experience, or maybe even a bigger if it's in groups, what does a program look like? How would I work with you if I were doing something like this?
So I always, whereas I have a framework, I always work bespoke with the client. So if it's a company, I'll work with, several leaders. We'll set up an arrangement around how many sessions they want. What is it that they need? Is there a broader program that they might be in already? Because if that's the case, I can tag the horse assisted part onto that. So if they're already in a, ongoing 12-month leadership program, maybe from another provider, we really fit the modules in very well. If it's my own program, we'd have to look at what is it that they actually need. What do they want to get out of this? Is it a better, do they want to build more trust, better communication? Is it about learning how to deal with uncertainty or change? Do they have organizational issues coming up? All of that. So it does tend to become very bespoke if it's, with a company or a group. Whereas with an individual, the horse-assisted learning part might be part of a longer coaching program. So maybe it's 10-hour coaching program and 2 or 3 of the hours are with the horses. It's typically not 10 hours, ongoing. The horse-assisted part would be sort of put in as and when. Yeah.
Appreciate you sharing that. And I know some of our listeners, they'll have been trained by organizations, but they'll have other wonderful skills. And we've got some amazing coaches in Power World community who are yoga trained or NLP trained or other somatic trained, and they've combined their work together. So what would you say to a coach listening in that is thinking, I've got all of these other skills, but how do I combine it with coaching? What's the process what advice would you give them?
So first of all, anything you do that you do really well and that you have a passion around, I mean, that lends itself to coaching or supporting or guiding or helping others, right? So if it's a yoga practice, you could coach around yoga, nutrition, health, well-being. If it's around leadership, if you've come out from corporate and you are a really good leader or a really good organizational project coordinator, anytime you have something that gives you a wealth of knowledge, it lends itself to coaching. I mean, I know you told me this because you were my mentor in the very beginning. And I think you said, what niche are you going to go for? What kind of coach are you going to be? And I'm like, well, I can tell you I'm not ever going to coach anybody in corporate. And you laughed and you said, why? I said, because I've just come out of 20 some years in corporate. And you said, you attract who you are. And this is exactly who I've coached the last 12 years are, corporate leaders as well as many, other non-corporate leaders. But I think if there's something you're passionate about and you're really good at, and it's part of your vision and dreams, then it lends itself for you to guide and help other people. And that guiding, and helping others can be in form of coaching. So then you just need to put some kind of certification around it so that you're sort of legit, at least, ethically. Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I think, I do think that no matter what stage of life we are, if we choose to go into the world of coaching, our niche can change. Because as we are evolving, like we were a lot younger when we met, Pia, we didn't have the experience of life that we have now. And maybe we worked with corporates in the past because of our past experience. But now, as we're mothers of grown children and we've experienced so much, we will then attract different types of people to our work. And I love the fact that you still work with corporates, but you're also bringing women in to think about their own leadership, no matter where they are in their life. They may not have been leaders in the traditional sense of the word, but they are leaders in their life. So I'd love to segue into that, if that's okay, the type of work we're doing with women.
I mean, that's been a big shift for me because the leadership coaching, it isn't just about coaching a leader. You're still coaching a person who comes with very human issues, right? From their marriage, from their friendship, relationship. A lot of the leadership coaching is also about coaching things that are going outside the leadership role in life in general. So I've noticed throughout I would say the last 5-6 years, there's been a shift to where women are becoming more visible in the workplace, certainly, in the world, in terms of stepping up in politics, in business, in all aspects of life. And I'm sensing that there's a real desire for them to empower themselves more, to be heard, to be seen, to matter, to step out in front and lead from a sort of a feminine perspective. And I love that shift, and I wanted to be part of it, and am now becoming part of it. But to answer your question about the shifting niches, I've also found myself coaching people around ADD and ADHD because that was my own family going through that. So sometimes you don't select the niche. It just kind of comes to you because you have that experience or you've lived through some of that, right? And so, yeah, I think I don't think you should limit yourself because you've been in one aspect, career, or, whatever you might have been in. I think you go for what it really attracts you and what you're passionate about.
And we go to get to this stage in our lives, Pia. We've all been through challenges, opportunities, growth spurts, places where we've had to step back. So there's so much. If we look back at the defining moments in our life and think, what have I learned from that? And how can I bring that to my work? And how can I support others in their lives right now who maybe it's not the same, but it's a similar connection? Then we can work with those different types of people, and it's ever evolving. I always say nothing is ever set in stone.
No, absolutely. You're so right. Your next client could come from wherever, right? And it's usually those clients that I love the most. It's like I meet them on the street, or we'll meet at a dinner, or it'll just sort of pop up, and then you'll find that the universe kind of brings you together for a reason. And I cherish that the most because it's not business I have to go chase, right? It comes sort of in an organic way, and I love that.
So, Pia, we're coming to the end of our conversation today, and I know that people will be as fascinated as I am about your work and what you're doing in the world right now. So how can people find out more about you?
Well, I have a website. That's a good place to start. It's www.caballasconsulting.com. I'm on LinkedIn as Pia Ault. I'm on Facebook as Pia Ault. I have an Instagram page. It's Pia Ault 3. So yeah, basically my name is on anything. So they can catch me there.
Fantastic. And I know you're doing some speaking events in the beginning of 2025. So if people want to come and listen to you, how can they find out about them?
So there's so generally it gets published closer to the event, and the one big event that I'm speaking at is a virtual event put on by Women Thrive, and it's going to be around the International Women's Month. So it'll be in March, I think the third week of March. That's going to be advertised on Facebook and LinkedIn periodically, and there are speaking engagements leading up to that. So I've got another 2 or 3 5-minute speaking engagements in December, January, and February leading up to that March. The other event is Costa Women putting on a live event in Marbella. It'll be in the Malaga area. And that's coming up on the 6th or 7th, whatever International Women's Day is. I think it might be the 7th of March. So that's a live event where I'm speaking. And again, if you're local to Spain, to the area, there's lots of people flying in for that. That's going to be a great day because it's a whole make it happen kind of networking and women's event for the day. So
it sounds an awesome event, like a chance to meet you in person as well. Yeah.
Yep.
So as we close off in our final few minutes, what advice would you give people coaches, leaders who coach, who want to integrate other types of learning into their work? What advice would you give them?
So just dive into it. Yeah. Don't start to think that because you're in one category or one niche that you can't branch into another. I found that when I thought that way, I really was going into sort of a negative, thought process. I can just advise to be curious, just really be curious and follow that dream, follow that vision, set your intent and manifest it. But don't be afraid to take on something that you don't know anything about.
Yeah, lovely words, Pia. And I'm sure right now there's a few people thinking, I've got to do this. So if you are doing that, go do it, as Pia says. Yeah, thank you for your time. Really appreciate you giving up this 40 minutes this morning. It was so lovely to see you.
Pleasure, Marie. Loved it. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Listeners, thank you for listening as always. If you like what you hear, please share it with your community and beyond. If you've got ideas for podcasts, let us know. We know you're listening. We know it's making a difference in your coaching world. So thank you and keep listening. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Thanks for listening. You can find out more about us on our website, www.empower-world.com, and on our social media networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Be empowered.